it is just, so it is 30 FPS in consoles for sure, but on PC it actually runs quite well. The PC version's good. You can scale it quite high. The frame rates can go quite a ways up there as well if you want. But I think even at 30 FPS, the motion blur and just the fluidity and the consistent frame times on Xbox help it feel like almost like a movie. Like for the first time, I would say like this really does feel like an interactive film in terms of like you watching a film, and just what they're doing here in terms of just level of detail. It's there's barely a pixel out of place is the way I would put it. Like when you're going through that game and you're watching these scenes, you know, you're moving through it. It basically always looks perfect, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like it's that refined, and just like the man. I mean, obviously, cutscenes are not everything. It's not, but that's what this game has a lot of, and it's just because of the high level of quality, like the rendering quality. Like there's scenes when these guys look so good, and then the way some of the stuff they do with the camera in there as well. Like I'll never forget that first time you enter. There's that area early on where you're sort of infiltrating, and when you first encounter your foe, I'm forgetting some of the names at this point.
The cannibals?
Yeah, and it's like they're like there's these big bursts of flames, you know, almost in time with the music popping up. And as you're sneaking around, you know, that's like you get all that lighting from that falling back, but then that's when you get to a certain point, the camera seamlessly moves from a gameplay perspective, zooms all the way across this like weird looking wasteland, and you're right up to a character that becomes, you know, part of your party, so to speak, shortly after that. And just the way that scene plays out and just the way it all comes together, you're just like, man, this is nuts. And then of course, you know, that scene with the giant was recreated as well. And we actually found out later talking to those guys that the reason the flame got downgraded was actually like a memory constraint thing more than anything else. I believe it was, Alex.
Yeah. You know, another praisable aspect of this is the scalability of the game. You just talked about it on PC. Like this game actually has a pretty good looking Series S version, all things considered, right? Like,
it does.
It looks pretty good. It is hitting that 30 FPS target. On PC, I talked about it and I made a video about it. They actually are one of the better Unreal Engine ports out there.
Yeah, it is.
Like it is like they have all the options you really want. The real-time menu system, much like I want out of any game. You know, it is generally very, very smooth, minus some traversal stutter, which is interestingly one of the few games where it's not on console. The Series X version does not have it.
Nope. Not at all. Even with those massive transitions from like one scene to the other when they do their beautiful camera pan, no stutters.
No stutters there. So I feel like this is like really exercising the Series X in a great way. And it's generally just shows like if you're going to target 30 FPS, this is probably the way to do it. Yeah. You know, I don't know, Oliver.
I covered this game on Series S and Series X, and I also covered it on PC handhelds for kind of
so we all dipped our toe in this one.
Yeah, for of like low spec video, so to speak. And yeah, I mean it looks quite comparable on Series S. You just lose those lumen reflections. That's the thing that stands out there. But I mean in general, the environments look very comparable. It runs at a bit of a lower resolution on Series S, but this isn't the kind of game that you're really looking for pinpoint precision out of anyways. So it's generally fine. And then, you know, you go over to like the Steam Deck or the ROG Ally, and it's like surprisingly scalable even on those platforms, and it can look pretty good even on those platforms there. So I thought that was really quite extraordinary. On the flip side though, on the high end on PC, it doesn't scale quite as far as Indie does, because you're still looking at software lumen. The settings improvements don't really give you a lot, although they do have a cool, like they do show you the settings change. That's really cool, but they don't give you that kind of next level of visual fidelity that we see from like the NVIDIA branch of UE5 there with RTX Ti and things like that. But in general, I mean, the game is, I mean, to me, it's just such a super impressive visual achievement. The character rendering and the cast of characters, they all look perfect. They animate so well. That facial capture captures so much subtlety that ends up in the final game. That's something that I didn't really see in Outlaws, for instance. I don't think they're quite going for photorealism, but you look here and you look at kind of what people are doing offline with UE5, And really, there's not a gigantic difference there. Like, you can
Exactly.
kind of see where we're going, and it's very compelling and extremely exciting. The environments are also very well crafted. The lighting in those environments is consistently great and really high quality. I especially like those moments, like John mentioned, where you transition rapidly between times of day and locations. That's just such a cool trick. I love the way they pulled it off here. And yeah, I mean, I think it's a fantastic achievement in real-time rendering. Probably, to me, the best looking UE5 game currently available, but it is limited in a lot of respects, I would say. But in exchange, it's like so visually impeccable and so visually consistent. I think, John, you compared it quite well and quite aptly to the Order 1886 in terms of a game that is more limited, more constrained, but is pushing up boundaries that perhaps as a result other games can't quite meet. So I think it's a really special title in that respect.
Exactly. The Order was also one of those games that was kind of like knocking at the next generation of a lot of things when it came out. And you could see like they were like pioneering a lot of very cool stuff with materials, especially. And a lot of the developers have gone on record saying that it was an inspiration to them, that game, and the research that they made available. And this to me feels like this does feel like a similar moment where it's like, okay, we're reaching really far ahead with graphics, but obviously that comes with limitations, which is the game itself is extremely limited in terms of what you can and cannot do in it. So this is very much a tech showpiece kind of thing. I mean, it's honestly, I said FMV games before, and that's not a joke. It really makes me think of something like when Dragon's Lair first appeared, where this is far more interactive than Dragon's Lair. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it's actually an FMV game or anything. It's not like that. But it is like, well, we're showing you something that feels like it's from the future almost in some ways. But obviously there's a cost in terms of what you can do in the game. And it does have that feel to it. And I am glad that these types of games do exist, because I think it's cool to have sort of a showpiece sort of thing like this. And just, man, another thing they do really well that I love is like the lens effects. Like a lot of games talk about trying to simulate the properties of a lens, and I don't always think it works. Like I remember the RE4 remake had like lens distortion, and it was kind of not great. Star Wars Outlaws does it too, and I know what they're trying to do, but I don't love it in that one. Here, it really does give you that impression of like looking through a real lens, like the way the depth of field works, the softness of it, just the way all the colors and everything comes together. It really does have this look of like you're peering through like a lens at something, as opposed to looking at a razor sharp video game image. And I think there's a lot to be said for that. And also to add on to the character stuff you were saying, Oliver, like there are times when you're in gameplay, like when you're first fighting Thorgester, I guess his name, at the beginning, right? He's great. You initially engage him in combat, like during a storm, and you watch as you fight him, like his facial expressions are incredible. Like the way he winces and changes his facial expressions and reacts to what's happening. I feel like it's something we've really not seen much of before, right? So you actually got some of that facial stuff during mid gameplay, which is nuts.